Divine justice never forgives these 6 things. What is karma and how does it work? By Carl Jung. There's an invisible force in the universe, one that Carl Jung called the self, and ancient wisdom traditions call karma. It's watching, it's recording, and according to Jung's deepest psychological insights and the timeless laws of cause and effect, there are 6 things this divine justice never forgives. Before we begin, let me ask you something. Have you ever witnessed someone who seemed to get away with terrible actions, only to watch their life mysteriously fall apart years later? Have you ever wondered why some people seem cursed while others are blessed? Today, we're diving deep into the psychological and spiritual mechanics of karma, divine justice, and the 6 unforgivable violations that set the wheels of cosmic retribution in motion. This isn't about religion. This isn't about superstition. This is about the profound psychological truths Carl Jung discovered in his decades of studying the human psyche and the collective unconscious. Stay with me until the end, because what I'm about to share might completely transform how you see your own life, your choices, and your destiny. Act 1, Understanding the Foundation. Segment 1, Who is Carl Jung? Before we explore the 6 things divine justice never forgives, we need to understand the man who helped us comprehend these invisible laws. Carl Gustav Jung wasn't just another psychologist. He was a pioneer who dared to explore the territories that science feared to touch, the realm of the soul, the unconscious mind, and what he called the numinous experience. Born in 1875 in Switzerland, Jung began his career as Sigmund Freud's protege. But Jung saw something Freud couldn't or wouldn't see. He realized that the human psyche wasn't just a product of personal experience and repressed desires. Instead, Jung discovered that we're all connected to something far deeper, the collective unconscious. Imagine your mind like an iceberg. The tip above water? That's your conscious awareness, your everyday thoughts and decisions. Just below the surface is your personal unconscious, your forgotten memories, repressed emotions, and personal complexes. But dive deeper, and you reach something profound, the collective unconscious. This is the psychological bedrock we all share, filled with archetypes, universal symbols, and what Jung believed were the laws of psychic energy that govern human destiny. And here's where it gets fascinating. Segment 2, What is Karma? The psychology behind cosmic justice. When most people hear karma, they think of some mystical cosmic scoreboard. Do good things, get good things. Do bad things, get bad things. But both Jung's psychology and genuine spiritual wisdom reveal something far more sophisticated. The word karma comes from Sanskrit, meaning action or deed. But it's not about a bearded figure in the sky keeping score. Karma is the law of psychological and energetic cause and effect. Jung called it synchronicity, meaningful coincidences that couldn't be explained by cause and effect alone, yet seemed to reveal an underlying order to the universe. He noticed that when people violated certain psychological truths, their lives would develop patterns of suffering that seemed almost orchestrated. Let me give you an example. Jung treated a patient. Let's call him Michael. Michael had betrayed his business partner, stolen money, and felt no remorse. Consciously, he thought he'd gotten away with it. But within 2 years, Michael developed severe anxiety. His relationships crumbled. His new business failed mysteriously, and he began having nightmares of being chased. Jung realized the psyche itself was enacting justice. Michael's unconscious mind wouldn't let the violation go unpunished. This is the key insight. Your unconscious mind is connected to something larger. What Jung called the self with a capital S. This self is like your internal judge, jury, and executioner. It knows every thought, every intention, every action, and it works tirelessly to bring you back into alignment with psychological and cosmic truth. Karma isn't revenge, it's correction. It's the universe, or your own deeper psyche, trying to restore balance, teach lessons, and push you toward wholeness, what Jung called individuation. But here's the critical point. There are 6 violations so severe, so fundamentally opposed to the laws of psychological health and cosmic order, that they trigger an immediate and unrelenting response. From this divine justice system, these 6 things, they never sleep. They never forget, and they never forgive until the lesson is learned and the balance restored. So what are they? Act 2, the 6 unforgivable violations. Violation 1, betrayal of the self. The first thing divine justice never forgives is the betrayal of your authentic self. Jung spent his entire career emphasizing one message. The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. But what happens when you do the opposite? When you systematically deny, repress, and betray your true nature? Let me tell you about Sarah. Talented artist, passionate about painting since childhood. But her parents wanted security, stability, respectability. So Sarah buried her dreams, got a corporate job she hated, married someone who fit the right profile, and built a life that looked perfect on Instagram. By age 35, Sarah was having panic attacks. By 40, she'd developed chronic pain with no medical explanation. Her marriage was loveless. She felt dead inside. This is what Jung called neurosis, the suffering that comes from living in opposition to your true self. And this suffering, it doesn't go away. It intensifies. It spreads. It contaminates every area of your life until you finally listen. Jung said, "There is no coming to consciousness without pain." People will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own soul. When you betray your authentic self, your true gifts, your genuine values, your soul's calling, you're not just disappointing yourself, you're violating a fundamental law of psychological health. And the psyche responds with increasing force, anxiety, depression, psychosomatic illness, relationship breakdown, and a persistent feeling that something is deeply wrong. Think about your own life right now. Are you living authentically? Or are you performing a role for others, for your parents, your culture, your ego's image of who you should be? Because here's the truth that divine justice enforces. You can fool everyone else, but you cannot fool the self. It knows, and it will make your life increasingly uncomfortable until you align with your truth. The karmic consequence of self-betrayal isn't punishment, it's course correction. The universe is literally trying to wake you up through suffering because you won't wake up through wisdom. But as severe as self-betrayal is, our second violation goes even deeper. Violation 2, inflicting conscious harm on the innocent. The second thing divine justice never forgives is the conscious infliction of harm on innocent, vulnerable beings, particularly children, animals, and those who cannot defend themselves. Jung spoke extensively about the shadow, the dark parts of ourselves we refuse to acknowledge. Everyone has a shadow. Everyone has capacity for selfishness, anger, even cruelty. This is part of being human. And Jung insisted we must acknowledge and integrate this darkness. But there's a difference between having a shadow and becoming it. There's a line that, once crossed, activates something in the cosmic order that Jung called the objective psyche, a level of consciousness that transcends the individual and enforces certain non-negotiable moral laws. History is filled with examples. Powerful people who abused their position to harm the vulnerable. They often seemed untouchable, protected by money, status, or institutions. But Jung noticed a pattern. Such individuals would often experience what he called enantiodromia, AID, Greek term meaning the emergence of the opposite. Their lives would eventually invert. The abuser becomes abused. The powerful become powerless. The concealed becomes exposed. Consider figures throughout history who harmed children or the vulnerable. Even those who seemed to escape earthly justice often met mysterious, fitting ends. Their legacies crumbled. Their names became synonymous with evil. Their psychological descendants carried the trauma for generations. Jung would say this isn't coincidence. When you harm the innocent, you're not just committing a crime against an individual. You're violating the archetypal principle of protection, nurturing, and care that exists in the collective unconscious itself. The self, both personal and collective, cannot and will not tolerate this violation. The karmic response is immediate and multi-layered. Psychological fragmentation. The perpetrator's psyche begins to split and disintegrate. Synchronistic consequences, coincidental events begin dismantling their life. Generational karma. The patterns play out in their children and descendants. Total exposure. Secrets eventually surface, often in unexpected ways. Psychic isolation. A deep, incurable loneliness sets in, even among crowds. Jung wrote, "If you harm an innocent, you're not harming just them. You're harming the divine child, archetype in the collective soul of humanity. And that collective soul has its ways of balancing the scales." This is why cultures across the world have similar sayings. Curses come home to roost. What goes around comes around. The mills of the gods grind slowly, but they grind exceedingly fine. If there's one thing to take from this section, protect the vulnerable. Honor the innocent. Because divine justice considers this sacred territory, and violations here carry the heaviest karmic weight. Violation 3. Living in absolute dishonesty. The third unforgivable violation is living in systematic, absolute dishonesty, particularly dishonesty with yourself. Now, Jung wasn't naive. He knew everyone lies sometimes. Small social lies, white lies to avoid hurt feelings. Occasional self-deception. These are part of human nature. But there's a level of dishonesty that becomes pathological, when your entire life becomes a fabrication. When you lie so consistently that you lose touch with reality. When you gaslight others and yourself into an alternative universe. Jung had a patient recorded, in his case studies, who maintained an elaborate double life, respected family man in one city, with a completely different identity and relationships in another. For years he managed this deception. Jung noted something fascinating. The man began having dreams of buildings collapsing, of being chased by faceless pursuers, of standing trial before unknown judges. His unconscious knew that this structure of lies was unsustainable, and eventually it collapsed. But not through external exposure, through internal breakdown. The man developed what Jung called a psychotic break. His mind literally couldn't maintain the contradiction anymore. This is the karmic consequence of absolute dishonesty, psychological fragmentation. Your psyche is designed to be integrated, conscious and unconscious, persona and shadow all working together. But lies create walls within the psyche. They force different parts of you to work against each other. Imagine your psyche like a kingdom. In a healthy kingdom, all the parts communicate and work together. But dishonesty creates civil war. Different parts of you holding contradictory realities, constantly fighting, consuming massive psychological energy just to maintain the illusion. Jung said, "You are doomed to make choices." This is life's greatest paradox. But dishonesty is the refusal to make real choices. It's the attempt to have contradictory realities simultaneously. And divine justice? It enforces coherence. It pushes toward truth through increasing pressure. First, small inconsistencies appear. Then, you need more lies to cover the original lies. Your memory becomes unreliable. You can't keep track of what you told whom. Close relationships begin to feel false. You develop anxiety, always afraid of exposure. Eventually, either external events or internal breakdown force the truth to surface. Here's the truth. You can lie to the world, but you cannot lie to your own unconscious. It knows, it records everything, and it will sabotage your lies in 1,000 subtle ways until truth emerges. Jung observed that the psyche has an almost moral intelligence. It moves toward truth, integration, and wholeness. Fighting this movement is like trying to hold a beach ball underwater. You can do it for a while, but it requires constant effort. And eventually, you'll slip, and it'll burst to the surface with tremendous force. The karmic principle here is simple. Truth is the ground of being. Dishonesty is building your house on quicksand. Divine justice doesn't need to punish. Dishonesty. Dishonesty punishes itself through inevitable collapse. Violation 4. Pride and inflation of the ego. The fourth thing, divine justice never forgives, is what Jung called inflation. The pathological expansion of the ego beyond its proper boundaries. The ancient Greeks called it hubris. Christians call it pride. At the deadliest sin, Jung called it psychological inflation. but they're all describing the same fundamental violation. When the ego identifies with powers, knowledge, or status that don't belong to it. We've all seen it. The CEO who believes he's untouchable, the celebrity who thinks rules don't apply, the guru who confuses his teachings with absolute truth, the person who gains a little power and suddenly thinks they're God's gift to humanity. Jung was particularly sensitive to this because he'd witnessed it in patients and courageously in himself. He wrote openly about a period where his explorations of the unconscious led to temporary inflation, where he began identifying with the archetypal energies he was encountering. But here's what Jung learned. The ego, your conscious identity, is just a small part of the total psyche. Below and beyond it is the unconscious, which is vast, powerful, and fundamentally beyond ego control. And when the ego inflates, when it thinks it's larger, more important, or more powerful than it actually is, the self steps in to deflate it. Jung called this the enantiodromia. Again, the principle that everything eventually turns into its opposite. The most inflated egos eventually experience the most dramatic falls. Think of the powerful rulers throughout history who declared themselves gods or invincible. Inevitably, their empires crumbled. Think of business leaders who claimed they'd revolutionized industries permanently, only to watch their companies collapse. Think of celebrities who thought they were above accountability, only to have their reputations destroyed overnight. Divine justice enforces humility through what Jung called compensation. The psyche naturally balances extremes. Inflate yourself too much, and compensatory forces, both internal and external, will arise to bring you back to ground. The karmic consequences of ego inflation include sudden catastrophic failure, often in the area of greatest pride, betrayal by trusted allies. Pride blinds you to danger signals. Public humiliation. The universe loves ironic reversals. Loss of genuine connection. Inflation isolates you from authentic relationships. Encounter with the shadow. Repressed weaknesses erupt violently. Physical or mental breakdown. The psyche forces rest and reflection. Jung pointed to myths like Icarus, who flew too close to the sun on wax wings and fell to his death. This isn't just a story. It's a psychological truth encoded in narrative. Overreach beyond your actual capacity, and gravity will reassert itself. But here's what's important to understand. Divine justice doesn't punish pride out of cruelty. It corrects pride out of necessity. An inflated ego is dangerous to yourself and others. It makes catastrophic decisions. It ignores wisdom. It harms people. It prevents growth. So the self, in its wisdom, will orchestrate experiences that puncture inflation and restore, right? Relationship between ego and the larger self. Jung said, the healthy ego is the servant of the self, not its master. When you remember this, when you hold your power, knowledge and status with humility, acknowledging their gifts to be used responsibly, not possessions that define your worth. You align with divine justice rather than opposing it. But violate this, inflate beyond your proper size, and watch how quickly the universe reminds you of your actual dimensions. Violation 5. Denial of the shadow. The fifth unforgivable violation is perhaps Jung's most unique contribution, the absolute denial and repression of your shadow. Jung said something that makes people uncomfortable. I'd rather be whole than good. What did he mean? He meant that pretending to be perfect, denying your darkness, your anger, your selfishness, your capacity for harm, doesn't make you moral. It makes you dangerous. The shadow is everything about yourself you don't want to admit exists. Maybe it's your rage, your jealousy, your sexual desires, your prejudices, your pettiness, your cruelty. Every human has a shadow. Every human. But our culture, our religions, our families, our social media personas, they all pressure us to present only our good side, to be the hero of our own story, to deny the monster that also lives within. And here's where karma enters. When you completely deny your shadow, it doesn't disappear. It goes underground. It grows in the darkness. It gains power, and eventually it erupts. Jung had a case of a minister, a man who preached love, compassion, and morality for decades. Publicly, he was a saint, but he'd never acknowledged his shadow. He'd never admitted his darker impulses, never integrated them consciously. In his 60s, this minister had what appeared to be a breakdown. He abandoned his family, engaged in behavior completely opposite to his previous life, and eventually ended up in Jung's care, confused about what had happened to him. Jung's diagnosis? Shadow possession. The repressed darkness had accumulated such pressure that it finally overwhelmed consciousness entirely. The man didn't integrate his shadow, he became it. But shadow denial doesn't always erupt internally. Often it projects outward. Jung noticed that what we most vehemently deny in ourselves, we most violently attack in others. The person most loudly condemning sexual immorality, often hiding sexual secrets. The politician campaigning on family values, often having affairs. The person constantly calling others selfish, often the most self-centered. This is projection, the unconscious defense mechanism where we see our denied shadow in other people and attack it there instead of acknowledging it in ourselves. The karmic consequences of shadow denial are brutal and precise. What you repress possesses you. Denied aspects control you from the unconscious. What you don't integrate erupts, shadow breaks through in destructive ways. What you project, you attract. You'll encounter your shadow in others until you own it. Your greatest condemnation reveals your greatest secret. Your judgments expose your wounds. You become the thing you hate. Eventually, shadow possession makes you embody what you deny. Jung wrote, "Everyone carries a shadow, and the less it is embodied in the individual's conscious life, the blacker and denser it is. If an inferiority is conscious, one always has a chance to correct it. But if it is repressed and isolated from consciousness, it never gets corrected." Here's what divine justice is teaching through shadow dynamics. You must become conscious of your darkness to avoid being controlled by it. Not to indulge it, not to act it out, but to acknowledge it, understand it, and integrate it consciously. This is what Jung meant by wholeness, not perfection. Not being only light, but conscious integration of both light and dark, good and evil potential, angel and demon, all held together in awareness. Deny your shadow, and karma will force you to confront it, either through your own eruptions or through painful encounters with others who mirror your denied darkness. Back to you. The only way to escape this karmic cycle? Stop running from your shadow and turn to face it. Violation 6. Ignoring the call of your soul. The sixth and final thing that divine justice never forgives is the persistent, conscious refusal to answer the call of your soul, what Jung called the refusal of the call to individuation. In mythology, there's a moment in every hero's story where they receive a call to adventure. Something beckons them from their ordinary life into something more meaningful, more authentic, more true. And in every story, the hero initially refuses. But here's the critical moment. Eventually, the true hero answers the call. They step onto the path. They begin the journey. But what happens when someone refuses forever? When they hear the call, and they do hear it, everyone does. But they consistently choose comfort, safety, approval, and the known over the risky path toward their authentic destiny. Jung called this neurosis. He believed most psychological suffering came from refusing the call to become who you're meant to be. The call comes in many forms. The persistent dream you keep having, the creative urge you keep suppressing, the relationship you know you need to leave, the career path that whispers your name, the healing journey you need to undertake, the truth you need to speak, the person you're meant to become. And when you ignore this call, divine justice responds with increasing intensity. Phase 1. Whispers. Gentle nudges, dreams, intuitive feelings. Phase 2. Discomfort. Increasing dissatisfaction. Restlessness. Is this all there is? Phase 3. Crisis. Job loss, relationship ending, health scare. Forcing change. Phase 4. Catastrophe. If still ignored, life structures collapse entirely. Phase 5. Spiritual death. Complete loss of meaning, purpose, vitality. Jung himself faced this. At age 38, successful career, respected in his field, he began having disturbing dreams and visions. He could have ignored them, suppressed them, stayed comfortable. Instead, he answered the call. He descended into what he called his confrontation with the unconscious, a dangerous, overwhelming journey into his own depths that nearly destroyed him but ultimately led to his greatest discoveries and contributions. He later wrote, "The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely." And also, what if life is calling you toward your destiny, and your refusal is causing all your suffering? This is the karmic truth. Your soul has an agenda. The self has a plan. There's a pattern trying to emerge in your life. And resisting this pattern, clinging to your comfort zone, refusing the transformation being demanded of you, this creates suffering that intensifies until you surrender. Divine justice here is like a loving but firm teacher, at first gentle, then more insistent, then severe, then overwhelming. Not because it's cruel, but because your life's purpose, your individuation, is too important to let you sleep through. So here's the question you need to answer honestly. What is your call? What has been knocking at your door? What truth are you avoiding? What transformation are you resisting? Because make no mistake, ignore it long enough and karma will make you answer. Through crisis, through collapse, through catastrophe if necessary. But you will answer. The wise person listens to the whispers. The stubborn person requires the catastrophe. Which will you be? Act 3. How karma actually works, the mechanisms. Narrator. Now that we understand the 6 violations divine justice never forgives, let's explore how karma actually operates. Because this isn't magic. According to Jung, it's the natural functioning of the psyche and its connection to a larger cosmic order. Mechanism. 1. The compensatory function of the psyche. Jung discovered that the psyche naturally seeks balance. If you're too one-sided in consciousness, the unconscious will produce compensatory content, dreams, symptoms, synchronicities to restore balance. This is karma at the psychological level. Violate psychological health, and the psyche responds with corrective pressure. Mechanism 2. Synchronicity and the unus mundus. Jung proposed that psyche and matter aren't separate. They're two aspects of one underlying reality he called unus mundus, the unified world. Synchronicity, meaningful coincidences, are how the underlying order of reality expresses itself. When you violate cosmic principles, synchronistic events begin orchestrating consequences, not as punishment, but as the universe's self-correction mechanism. The person who betrays innocence suddenly coincidentally encounters their own betrayal. The person living in dishonesty randomly gets exposed. These aren't coincidences to Jung. They're the universe maintaining coherence. Mechanism 3. The collective unconscious as moral authority. Jung believed we're all connected through the collective unconscious, a shared psychological substrate containing universal patterns and moral intuitions. When you violate fundamental moral principles, you're not just offending social conventions. You're violating patterns built into the collective human psyche, and that collective psyche, Jung suggested, has ways of enforcing its laws through dreams, projections, and synchronistic events. Mechanism 4. Energy and libido distribution. Jung viewed psychic energy, libido, as a real force that must flow. When you violate psychological or moral truths, you create blockages in this energy. It can't flow naturally, so it builds up pressure and finds other often destructive outlets. Karma, in this view, is simply the natural consequences of blocked or misdirected psychic energy, eventually forcing its way back to balance. Mechanism 5. The self as internal judge. Jung's most important discovery was the self, the archetype of wholeness and the center of the total personality, both conscious and unconscious. The self functions like an internal divine judge. It knows your highest potential and every violation of that potential, and it orchestrates your life experiences through dreams, symptoms, attractions, and synchronicities to push you toward individuation. Divine justice, according to Jung, isn't external. It's the self's relentless pressure toward wholeness. These mechanisms work together. Violate one of the 6 principles, and you trigger psychological compensation, symptoms, dreams, anxiety, synchronistic consequences, meaningful coincidences, collective unconscious responses, social consequences, energy blockages, life force turned destructive, the self's corrective interventions, crises forcing growth. This is how karma works according to Jung, not as cosmic revenge, but as the psyche's natural intelligence working to maintain balance, enforce growth, and push toward wholeness. Act 4, breaking the cycle. Can karma be transformed? Narrator. So here's the crucial question. If you violated these principles, and let's be honest, most of us have in some way, are you doomed? Is karma a life sentence? Jung's answer might surprise you. No. But transformation requires something specific. Step 1. Conscious recognition. The first step in transforming. Karma is what Jung called making the unconscious conscious. You must recognize honestly, completely, without self-deception, what you've done, what you've violated, what consequences you've set in motion. This isn't about guilt or shame. It's about honest seeing. The self doesn't require groveling. It requires truth. Step 2. Taking responsibility. Jung insisted that psychological health requires taking responsibility. Not blaming circumstances, parents, society, or fate. Saying, I did this. These are my choices. These are my consequences. This is the beginning of power. When you own your actions completely, you reclaim the power to change. Step 3. Making amends. Where possible, make amends. If you've harmed others, seek to repair the harm. If you've betrayed yourself, begin living authentically. If you've denied your shadow, integrate it consciously. Karma responds to corrective action. The universe and the self recognize genuine efforts to restore balance. Step 4. Accepting the lesson. Jung believed suffering isn't punishment, it's education. Every karmic consequence carries a teaching. The question is, will you learn? Accept the lesson the universe is teaching through your suffering. Extract the wisdom. Allow the experience to transform you. This is how karma becomes catalyst rather than curse. Step 5. Committing to individuation. Finally, commit to the process Jung called individuation, becoming your true self. This is the ultimate karmic resolution. When you align your ego with the self, when you live authentically, when you integrate your shadow, when you answer your soul's call, karma relaxes its grip. Why? Because karma's purpose is accomplished. It exists to push you toward wholeness. Once you're committed to that journey, its harsh lessons become gentler guidance. Jung himself demonstrated this. After his confrontation with the unconscious, his own dark night of the soul, he emerged transformed. He'd faced his shadow, answered his call, aligned with the self. And his later life, while not without challenges, had a quality of peaceful purpose his earlier years lacked. Here's the hopeful truth. Divine justice isn't vindictive. It's instructive. It doesn't want your destruction. It wants your transformation. Every karmic pressure is an invitation to grow, to wake up, to become more conscious, more whole, more authentically yourself. The 6 unforgivable violations we've discussed, they're only truly unforgivable if you refuse to learn from them. If you remain unconscious, unrepentant, unchanged. But the moment you wake up, take responsibility, and commit to transformation, karma begins its transformation from taskmaster to teacher, from punishment to purpose. You can break the cycle, but only through consciousness, courage, and commitment to becoming who you truly are. We've journeyed deep today into Jung's psychology, into karma's mechanisms, into the 6 violations divine justice never forgives. Betrayal of your authentic self. Conscious harm to the innocent and vulnerable. 3. Living in absolute systematic dishonesty. 4. Pride and inflation of the ego. 5. Complete denial of your shadow. 6. Refusing the call of your soul. These aren't arbitrary rules created by ancient priests or modern psychologists. According to Jung, these are fundamental laws of psychological and cosmic order. violations that trigger the self's corrective mechanisms, synchronistic consequences, and the universe's relentless pressure toward balance and wholeness. But here's what I want you to understand as we close. Divine justice, karma, the self's corrective function, whatever you want to call it, it's not your enemy. It's the deepest wisdom of the universe trying to guide you home to your true self. Every consequence is a course correction. Every synchronicity is a message. Every crisis is an invitation to transform. The suffering isn't random or cruel, it's purposeful, educational, and ultimately loving. Jung said, "Your visions will become clear only when you can look into your own heart. Who looks outside dreams. Who looks inside awakes." So here you are, right now, at this moment. You've received knowledge that most people never encounter. You understand the invisible laws that shape human destiny. You know the violations that trigger karmic response. You know the path to transformation. The question is, what will you do with this knowledge? Will you continue violating these principles, hoping somehow you'll be the exception? That divine justice will overlook your transgressions? History and Jung's case studies suggest this doesn't end well. Or will you take the harder but more rewarding path? Will you live authentically even when it's uncomfortable? Protect and honor the vulnerable, recognizing the sacred trust involved? Commit to truth both with others and especially with yourself? Maintain humility, remembering your ego is servant, not master? Face your shadow, integrating your darkness consciously rather than projecting it. Answer your soul's call, even when it means leaving comfort behind. This is the path of individuation. This is alignment with divine justice. This is how you transform from karma's victim to karma's collaborator. Let me leave you with one final story from Jung's work. Late in his life, Jung was asked by a student, "After all your years of studying the psyche, the unconscious, and the self, what's the most important thing you've learned?" Jung thought for a moment, then said, "The most important thing I've learned is that we are lived by powers we don't fully understand. But we have a choice. We can remain unconscious, at the mercy of these powers, blown about by forces we can't see. Or we can become conscious, face these powers, understand them and work with them intentionally." He continued, "Karma, fate, divine justice, call it what you will. It's not about being punished or rewarded by some external judge. It's about whether you're willing to become conscious. Everything in the universe is trying to wake you up. The only question is, will you listen to the whispers or do you need the catastrophe? So, my friend, what will it be? The whispers are here right now. You're feeling them as you watch this. That subtle discomfort about the areas of your life that aren't aligned. That quiet knowing about the changes you need to make. That persistent call you've been ignoring. Divine justice is speaking to you, not through my words, but through your own inner response to these truths. Will you listen? If this video has awakened something in you, here's what I want you to do. First, leave a comment below sharing which of the 6 violations resonated most deeply with you and, if you're willing, what changes you're going to make. Your sharing might be exactly what someone else needs to hear. Second, subscribe to this channel and hit the notification bell. We're building a community of people committed to consciousness, authenticity, and genuine transformation. You belong here. Third, share this video with someone who needs to hear it, not to judge them, but to offer them the same gift of awareness you've received today. And finally, take one concrete action. Today, just one that aligns you with your authentic self and moves you away from these violations. Don't wait for perfect conditions. Don't wait for more information. Start now. Jung's final message to us was this: I am not what happened to me. I am what I choose to become. Divine justice, karma, isn't about what's already happened. It's about what you choose from this moment forward. Choose consciousness. Choose authenticity. Choose wholeness. Choose to answer the call. The universe is watching. Yourself is waiting. Divine justice is ready to become your ally rather than your adversary. The choice, as always, was yours. Thank you for taking this journey with me today. I'll see you in the next video, where we'll continue exploring the deeper truths of psychology, spirituality, and human transformation. Until then, stay conscious, stay authentic, and remember, you are so much more than you think you are. The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. Carl Jung.